Now children, when we talk about kingdom Animalia, we say it is classified into phylums. Okay, phylum is the name given to a singular one, and when there are several, we call them phyla, Phyla. Now, how these are classified? On the basis of certain characteristic features. And these characteristic features or salient features include their body, symmetry. Remember, in the previous video we have already discussed what is body symmetry, then presence or absence of notochord. I'll explain all these points. Then number 3, presence or absence of body cavity. Body cavity is also known as cilium. Then number of germ layers that are present in the embryo, and then mode or origin of mouth, and so on. There are various features that we can categorize, but first of all, when we start with the structural organization, that stands for the type of organization of body. We say on the basis of that every organism has a cellular level, then a tissue level, and then an organ system level. Right. This one is the cellular level, as we always know, formed of loosely aggregated cells. Okay, these are loosely aggregated cells which are not at all organized into tissues or organs. Okay, these are not organized ones. They show some division of labor, do show some division of labor. Okay, and the example if we have to take here is sponges. Then we move to the tissue level. It will be multicellular because it is made up of cells. Multicellular. And when it is multicellular, cells occur in distinct layers. So here the layers are formed of the cells. Example, hydra. Then we come to the organ system. Obviously it is again multicellular. And here the body has organized tissues. Tissues are into well-defined organs on the basis of their level. Organs are formed and systems are formed. Example, we talk about respiratory system, digestive system. So all these animals, they come under organ system level when they have well-developed systems in the body, right? All higher animals. This is the first. Now we move to the second one, that how is the body symmetry. When we talk about the body symmetry of these organisms, we talk about that if these are able to get divided, that means the arrangement of body parts is in such a manner that it is possible to cut the body into similar halves. Then we give it a name and we call it symmetrical. Alright. May it be using one plane, or maybe like this, or in any plane, or in a particular plane. When we are able to cut the body of an organism into a distinct body structure in a plane, we call it symmetry. If the body can be cut into two equal halves in any plane, that is called radial symmetry. In any plane, but body is cut in two halves. If the body is cut in two halves only in one plane, that is known as bilateral, where each half becomes the mirror image of the other. Sometimes animals are not at all able to get cut, or they are so highly irregular in form that body cannot be cut or cannot be divided into equal parts. Then that symmetry is always known as, that type is always known as asymmetrical. This is asymmetrical. And if we have to talk about asymmetrical, we say amoeba. Cannot cut the body into any two equal halves in any plane. Not possible. Alright, and this one is symmetrical. Where radialis can be cut into two planes, two halves in any plane, or maybe in one plane in two equal halves which are the mirror images of each other. So radial and bilateral, and this one is asymmetrical. Moving to the third point, presence or absence of notochord. Okay, now this is something new for you. You know, some animals, they possess a skeleton rod. Skeletal rod like structure, and we call it notochord. At some stage of their life, all those animals which possess notochord, they are called chordates. Okay, chordates. And obviously they are known as chordates, means they belong to phylum Chordata. They have a chord, that's why chordata. And all these chordata, they are known as vertebrates. And those which lack notochord, we call them non-chordates. And non-chordates are invertebrates. No chord, so non-chordates. Alright, this is a distinct feature, presence or absence of notochord. If they have a notochord, they are known as chordata. And if they do not have a notochord, we call them invertebrates or non-chordates. Then, presence or absence of body cavity. What is the other name of body cavity? That is coelom. Remember? Now, when we talk about body cavity, on the basis of its presence or absence, we divide the animals, or we group the animals into number 1, acoelomates, animals who do not have any cavity, means no cavity in the body. Then what do they have? Except the digestive tract. That means flatworms. What the flatworms they do? They have only a general body lining, simple digestive tract. There is no such otherwise a cavity in the body. Alright. Then pseudocoelomates. Number 2. You know, pseudopodia, we always talk about pseudopodia and pseudocoelomates. Pseudo word means for false. So it means there is something missing in it. Pseudocoelomates are the animals. Those have body cavity but this does not arise from the mesoderm. What is mesoderm? We will be coming in the next point where we will be covering germ layers. 3 germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. Ecto is the outer, meso is the central one, or endo is the inner. Meso as the name says, middle. So if the body cavity does not arise from the mesoderm or the middle layer, we call it false and is not lined by epithelial cells. Okay, and is not lined by epithelial cells means it is not a well-defined body cavity. It may be starting from the upper end and is not complete in the lower end. Here it is blind, but there may be a body cavity on the top which may go down till here and stop somewhere, but is not a complete one, not reaching the lower end. Okay, then third is coelomate. Coelomate means those who have animals have true coelom lined by mesodermal epithelium. Is known as coelomate. Moving to our germ layers. Here you have to simply understand that there is a true coelom, means they have a proper body cavity, a true coelom, and lined by the mesodermal epithelium. That means the proper lining is also there. They have the proper anterior end and the posterior end. Then the germ layers. When we talk about germ layers, we say animals which have only 2 germ layers in the early embryo. Two germ layers, which two? Ectoderm, outer, and the endoderm, inner. Derma is the skin. Okay, derma is the name given to skin. So we say if they have an outer layer and an inner layer, we call it diploblastic. If they have animals, if they have 3 germ layers, we call them triploblastic. It means they have ectoderm, then is mesoderm, then is endoderm, outer, middle and inner. So 3 germ layers, triploblastic, 2 germ layers, these are diploblastic. Then is the mode of origin of mouth, as I told you. Here animals belong to 2 categories on the basis of their origin of mouth. If the mouth arises from or near the blastopore of gastrula, Now these terms are highly, um, you can say, like very heavy words for you, as you have never heard what is a gastrula. Actually, what happens whenever the embryo transforms into a few cell stage, 8 to 16 cell stage, we give names to it, gastrula, morula, so on, and it gets embedded in the uterine lining. And here we are talking about the origin of mouth. If it is near the blastopore of the gastrula, we call it protostomia. If it is arising anterior to it, anterior at some distance, we call it deuterostomia. It's not a compulsory basic point for you. This is an exception. Okay. If it arises from the blastopore, we call it protostomia. If not, at some distance, deuterostomia. Right? Then we move to the basic classification or the outline of the entire kingdom Animalia. Here the outline says kingdom Animalia, divided into two levels, cellular and tissue first. Okay, if we say cellular, then we call porifera, this is the level of organization. And here in the tissue level, we have further differentiation into either coelom absent, pseudocoelom present, or true coelom absent. Then if we say coelom absent, then we can say it can be coelenterata, and here the body is radial. Body shows radial symmetry. Here body shows, the second one, bilateral symmetry. If it shows bilateral symmetry, we call it, with the second or the third phylum, platyhelminths. Now, if the pseudocoelom is absent, we call it nematoda. If true coelom is absent, then we have to further differentiate it into by saying mesodermal cells are formed from single cell during growth of embryo. And the second one is endoderm give rise to coelom. If we come to this category, here we divide it into three phylums. That three phylums belong to this classification: Annelida, Then is Arthropoda. And is Mollusca. And if we move to this classification, we see that here further we divide them on the basis of whether the notochord absent. Notochord, remember, the skeletal rod. Then intermediate characteristics, that is in between. Or the notochord present. If this is the case, we call it as Gynodermata. If intermediate characteristics, then it is Hemichordata. If notochord present, we call them Chordata. Let's revise quickly how many phylums have we covered under kingdom Animalia. The number 1 is Porifera with the cellular body level of organization. Then we move to body symmetry, where we have considered Coelenterata and Platyhelminths. Then when the pseudocoelom is present, Nematoda. And afterwards we move to this Annelida, then Arthropoda, Mollusca, on the basis of the mesodermal cells which are formed from the single cell during the growth of embryo. And if the endoderm give rise to coelom, then we say whether the notochord present, Gynodermata, intermediate characteristics, Hemichordata, and notochord present, we call it Chordata. Clear? This is how we have to learn and understand kingdom Animalia. Thank you.